I feel what I do in a suit, even with an animatronic head, is definitely acting.
You can put a monster suit on a hanger and film it, and it's going to look pretty, but if it doesn't have life, movement, and character behind it, and an actor's heart, it's going to be a really pretty thing to hang on a hanger.
We're just not guys meandering around in rubber suits, told to like stand here and let the suit do the work. But a lot of people have that idea.
People forget there's somebody in there.
My favorite, that's Ultraman.
I used to love watching guys in gorilla suits.
Godzilla was my favorite.
Doug Jones' performance as Abe Sapien. Definitely Predator.
The alien suit is a classic.
In my mind, the greatest man in a suit is the Gill Man in Creature from the Black Lagoon.
He's like Godzilla, just that he's part human.
When people ask me what they need to do to be a suit performer, my immediate response is always the physicality of the role is surprisingly demanding.
You have to be willing to train and train and train. There has to be that drive, there has to be that passion of going, I'm gonna give up everything else for this character.
You stick most people in a giant creature suit, they'll be screaming within 30 seconds.
Usually audition a performer, see if they have the right ability, and see if they're prepared to go through that pain.
Hi. Doug. It's good to get everything on. This is the first time, so now I really have a feeling in my head what it's going to be like. Even though I know it's going to be hard, it's nice to feel the weight of it all.
It might be a little easier too once you have the other one. Not that it's lighter, but at least it'll be
just to balance me. Yeah. I gotta really watch, you know, where I hit because I could just like flip the whole arm off. Yeah, forearms definitely need to start being trained. I haven't been doing a lot of forearm, I've been doing all legs. All right. I've worked a lot on the legs, which is perfect. I need the legs, but I definitely never felt the arms. That's what I'm gonna work on, for sure. Am I going through the arms right now, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very comfy.
People always ask, is it hot? Well, let me tell you something. Yes.
We're gonna grab some skates around
here. Let's do it.
It's not for people who are claustrophobic. It's not for people who are not patient.
It will be heavy, it will be a little bit uncomfortable, you can't see very well, you can't hear very well, you can't feel anything, you can't walk for yourself sometimes. You become a nursing home patient. That's always the answer, yes.
You know, the costume is just right on your face and you're just like, oh, how am I going to move? And so at first it's just a fear thing. You're just like trying to figure out how to move.
Oh, that's great.
And then they put you in again and again and again, and you start to calm down, and the skills that you learn, it all starts to come together.
It begins. The torture begins.
I only hired the right actor for the suit. That's the first step, which is the simplest, but not everybody does. The second one is I play to their advantages. Dog is a great actor in a suit, but I would never have him play an action monster because he doesn't understand that language that well. He's great at slow-moving, elegant, or vaguely menacing. Brian is physical. Brian is brutal. He's great at fights. He charges. He doesn't move. He charges. So, you know, you cast them correctly. You cannot just say, oh, they're good suit performers. I don't see Dog being able to do Mr. Wink on Hellboy, for example. And it's not a limitation, it's a specialization.
For me, taking on a character, whether it's a human being in a t-shirt that's delivering witty dialogue, or whether it is a four-legged monster that growls at people and goes, swipe, across your face, all those characters deserve an actor's touch to develop a heart and soul, an intention, fears, wants, desires.
How do I look? How do I sound? What do I wear? How do I move? What's my background? What's my whole, psychological makeup? Why am I the way I am?
This has to be beating and working and feeling something for that character.
When your face is covered and you put that veil on, I think it lowers the intimidation factor and it kicks up the creative process and puts me in touch with some stuff that I normally, creatively, might not have found.
It really does afford me, the actor, a chance to really lose myself in a side of myself I would not necessarily be able to lose myself in. And that is an incredible freedom.
The drawbacks to it is that sometimes you're treated like a prop on set. You have your face covered, you have your body covered, you're sitting over in a chair, and people just assume that since you're sitting there, you're comfortable, you're sleeping, you're doing that, but really you want to eat, you want to get a drink, you'd rather just lay down because sitting up in a 135-pound suit really isn't that comfortable anyway.
The perception is if you're in a suit with an animatronic head, you're a suit performer. But if you're wearing a costume and a makeup, now you're an actor.
I've tried to encourage my other actor friends who do this kind of work as well to just always call ourselves actors.
I don't want to just be a guy that has to wear a suit to be able to play a role. I'm an actor, so whether it's a suit or an animatronic or a makeup, I just don't want to have to differentiate between them in some kind of category.
Casting for little people is a little more difficult. We're put in this little area of aliens or Martians or trolls, leprechauns. We don't get the opportunity to be your next door neighbor or your best friend or a teacher.
When there's a delineation between actor and monster guy, the studio system and the public and the press often think that that is second class. Actors are really cool, and they're movie stars. These guys, we're not sure what to do with them, so we'll call them suit performers. I would work my ass off for a movie, blood, sweat, and tears to make a character come to life. And when it came time for contract negotiations, press, being invited to premieres, red carpet events, these people over here, we were never invited to do that before. Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney, back in the black and white days, they were movie stars. I don't know what happened in the meantime, but somehow this category was formed where, anybody can do that.
Another step in my experiment, my dear. Ramona is now a gorilla.
Ramona? This is Ramona?
Yes.
Do you intend to advance her one more step?
To the human level? No.
I don't blame you, Doc. It's the stupidest looking gorilla I ever saw.
In the early days, guys that put on animal suits, like maybe a bear suit or whatever, or gorillas and thing, they were mistreated for one thing. I mean, they were like, yeah. And they weren't called guys in suits or gorilla men, or they thought it was like a stunt guy or an extra that wore a suit and did stuff.
Years ago, there used to be Screen Extras Guild, but you couldn't do any acting type of stuff unless you belonged to the Screen Actors Guild. And there was a lot of us, all of us mostly, were two-card holders, the cowboys. So that if we're on a location somewhere shooting, and the director decides, well, I think I want somebody to fall a horse over there or do a fight or anything like that, we could do it. They'd just convert us up to the other card and we would do it. In those days, if they wanted me to be Mickey Mouse, I'd be Mickey Mouse. You know, anything I could do that I would sign a contract, that's what we did.
Unknown Island is one of the first dinosaur movies where they use guys in suits. And I knew Ellis Berman. He did the heads for Jack Pierce, the monster heads and all that stuff. I went to school with his son, Sonny, so I got to meet him. Well, they were going to shoot the stuff out in Palmdale. Well, they picked the hottest day of the year to go out, and so I got to go out with them. These were just stunt guys now. I mean, these things are really hot, and it took them like a half an hour to get them in and out of the suits, so they just tried to stay there. When these guys would rest, it looks like a weird mating ritual. Well, this one guy just got overheated, just fainted dead away, just fell over, and it's actually in the movie.
Things like that would never bother us. If you hurt yourself, you didn't go and tell the first assistant anything. You just held it, you toughed it, and you worked on it. If you said anything about it, that's a kiss of death.
I learned a lot about guys in suits in that time. It's a wonder I ever wanted to be one after I saw that. I used to see all the jungle movies, and I loved the gorilla guys in them. That planted a seed in me, and I said, someday, I wanted to be a gorilla man. Everybody had their own style. Charlie Gamora, who was my gorilla god, he's the guy that taught me how to do a gorilla, as a matter of fact.
What? Now, boys, you better go on a diet because you're getting awful fat and awful heavy. Give me the other end of the rope. Thank you. Now, we'll leave it here for whoever it belongs to.
He started in the 20s, in the silent Tarzan films and stuff, and went up into the 50s. And they had a heart attack, and he really couldn't do it anymore. He also created The Martian from War of the Worlds. Then there was, of course, Crash Corrigan.
Stop, don't hurt him.
Thanks. You must be the White Witch I've heard so much about.
Crash was a cowboy star. My God, he did 8,000 westerns. Crash did the monster gorilla guy. He was, it's kind of a thing, and he had his, everybody's got their things they do. I mean, Crash was always doing it. I don't know if he's batting flies. I don't know what I just hit the microphone. And then you got Emo Van Horn, who probably had about the worst suit ever. But the way he worked it was marvelous.
Go back in there. Go back in there.
His suit, he actually had an opening here. You can see the bridge of his nose. It's a total opening thing. It's not just two eyes. The whole thing is open. And it looks a little weird. But he had such good body English, and what he did, you kind of forget that. And then, of course, Janos Verhofstadt came in, too. He was a great chimp. The chimp he had, I thought, was the best chimp I ever saw in my life. I mean, it looked almost like a real chimp, because he was a very small guy.
Molecular genetics.
He was a gymnast and could climb a tree in about 10 seconds. And then, of course, George Burroughs came along in the 40s. And I think George had one of the best suits going. George learned how to make molds and stuff, and he made his own suit. Now, so did Charlie. Now, the other guys had suits built. They didn't build their suits. When I got the chance to meet Charlie, finally, he was over at Paramount. He was in their makeup lab. I finally got up enough nerve to call him, and he just answered the phone. So I asked him, I said, well, you know, you look like everything's moving on your face. And he said, well, it doesn't. The only thing that worked was the mouth open and closed. It's the body English that you do in the suit that makes it work, and your eye expression. Like wide eyes and then, you know, just all kinds of things. And he said, you'll be surprised with just those eyes of how much expression you can get that people swear they see the brows move and everything else.
This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
I mean, when I did Ghostbusters, people thought they saw the whole face moving around when Tracy would do something. My first gorilla, Kogar, was just kind of a nasty guy all the way around. You couldn't really make him real friendly. He's got the big fish mouth, that's what I used to call it. After I had Kogar, I was thinking, I'd like to have a more benevolent gorilla. I mean, one that doesn't look mad all the time. So I had met Rick Baker, 13 years old, and by the time he was about 18, I guess, I realized I really wanted a new gorilla head. Rick Baker did this great job. Now here, I'll show you the secret of Tracy. I'll try to poke some light in here if I can do it too, so you can see something. I don't know if it's going to help or not, but inside is a negative of me. So it fits right against my face, very, very tight. And that's why when I put the makeup around my eyes, you can't see any division at all. But that's what he looks like. And my chin actually works. When I open my mouth, that makes this chin open. That's when he snorts. That's Kogar. He's got the Corrigan face on him a little bit. Don Post Sr. sculpted this. Now this is more uncomfortable than the one Rick made, I gotta say. I don't know if you can see this, but there are 2 plastic tubes in here. And my mouth actually comes to the gorilla's nose. That's where I breathe through. And I breathe through those 2 little tubes. And you don't get a whole lot of air that way. And that was kind of bad. Remember, in the 30s and 40s, gorillas were still very mysterious creatures. There weren't a lot of photos of them, and I don't think there's hardly any footage of them. There were sketches they would see, like one a gorilla carrying off a native girl or something. So that's how they became the monster gorillas and stuff. And then, of course, when they started finding out more stuff about gorillas, that took care of that.
I was working a show called Barnum at the London Palladium. You know, it was a show where you had to have a lot of different skills, and tumbling was one of them. There was an ad in the trades looking for actors who could portray apes. It was a Tarzan movie. The apes had to be believable. That was my first experience, you know, working in a suit. It wasn't animatronic because I didn't use the radio control then. I was operating the jaw myself. If there was a close-up, then they had a cabled head, which would give extra movement. The first time I met Rick, he had just finished sculpting white eyes, and he was saying about, this guy's got a lot of work to do. And he wasn't kidding, because every time that character was on the screen, he was either chasing or fighting. When I did Gorillas in the Mist, then it was a radio-controlled head with, I think, like 4 puppeteers. And it wasn't my eyes. I was, you know, to get the anatomy correct, I was looking through the nostrils. That was a real challenge because that was matching up with real gorillas. And at the time, Rick Baker never thought, you know, we'd have direct cuts from real gorilla to guy in a suit. Sigourney Weaver did tons and tons of stuff with the real gorillas, and she was fantastic. But you couldn't make a story out of it, so they had to have somebody in a suit that would match in. And also there were scenes that the real Digit did and real Dian Fossey, and Sigourney and I would watch that footage and reenact those scenes. To play a gorilla, I mean, obviously, I'm just about 5'7", so me in a gorilla suit would be about the height of a real gorilla.
okay. It's okay.
John Alexander was really working with us hands-on. He said a gorilla is very fluid and moves slow. As a gymnast, I, move fast. And then he'd be like, no, 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 no. That's wrong. Slow down. Every day we would watch the Discovery Channel videos on gorillas, on, chimpanzee movement. And then after watching those videos, we would move on to just all of the movement training, learning how to walk quadruped with arm extensions.
Knuckle walkers. It's an arm extension, and then you have the knuckle down here, and the actor has a lever that he pulls and he can bend to get the movement.
Great. Okay, you can hold that there. We go to Misty and Fern. Misty and Fern. Fern, give her a little kick. Walk away. Run away. Right, open their mouths. Give them a rest. Give them a break.
I think, in general, the public have this love affair with the gorillas.
Brian, Kevin.
And I guess, if you're going to be a suit performer, a lot of suit performers like to do a gorilla.
The farther you get from human, the more difficult it's going to be to wear.
What's up, buddy? How you doing, man? Good. How's that thing come along? It's coming along. Oh, I see it. Oh, that looks great, man. Oh, that's so cool. Did it get a lot heavier? It did. It definitely did. When all the elements came together. Got a little, we'll see how it feels on the foot.
A stretch. Year-round I'm training, whether I'm swimming, mountain biking, just to create a baseline for everything.
Now, the trick for me is that I'm a really skinny guy. And a lot of the roles that I get is because I'm so skinny and so tall. So I can't bulk up. If I bulk up with muscle, I'm done. But if I stay emaciatedly skinny and have no strength to me, I'm done then too. So I have to find a real athletic, skinny balance somewhere in there.
Yoga keeps your body flexible because the strength is really important, but your flexibility is as important as that.
Aerobic activity, whether it's jogging or on a treadmill, or I even like aerobics classes set to music.
I don't do any stressful exercises or calisthenics or what is that, Zumba, whatever. No, that's not for me.
Okay, joke's over. Let the weights out of here.
I don't get into the mental or the physical aspect of the character until I start seeing the sculpture. Because the sculpture itself, the design of it, tells me where the balance points are. It tells me where the strength training needs to be. The suit tells me how I need to move.
Well, the good thing is I don't have to move fast, right? I'm a slow-moving monster. It actually helps my stomp walk better. It's more... Exactly.
So many of the creatures that all of us have played have had a certain squat and bend to them that where your thighs, your lower back, your core muscle area needs to be there.
The thing is, I can start training and then I build up a muscle memory that might, when I get in the suit, throw the balance point off. Then I start training, whether it be shoulders, legs.
Because the last thing that you want to do is make it halfway through the day and then your body gives up. That can't happen. The production can't afford that.
Is there going to be something you asked for?
Yeah, I'm going to try them on because the hand was slipping. Yeah. So I think this might help because I was sweating a lot.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Watch your eyeballs.
Are these both the same weight?
Should be. One's 50 pounds.
There's always things that you do to keep tuning up. I like taking workshops from time to time. I like taking acting workshops. A lot of times I'll take directing workshops. I think that's just as important as acting for an actor to understand how to communicate well with a director.
I look in the mirror sometimes, and I'll like watch my body language, my movements. We might tape it and do playbacks. Okay, that's not gonna work. Try this instead. And it's all a little bit of practicing and rehearsing. And then once we get the character down and something that works, then let's print it.
I first came up to Los Angeles in 1987. I went to an open call audition at Universal Studios to be the walk-around Frankenstein.
I think, honestly, that's the greatest training you can have to be a guy in a suit, because it's the only place where guys in suits are still done.
One of my first gigs was Alvin, and I think that definitely helped me with my performances on other suits. The first smell of the sweat inside the suit, the dripping, prepared me for what was to come.
Anybody that can go out in a theme park and perform live in front of an audience of 10 to 15,000 people every day and know that there's no off moment. There's no like, okay, cut now and take a break. No, we're out there for a half an hour, 40 minutes of every hour performing.
When I was in college at Ball State University in Indiana, I met a mime artist, and the worlds that were created by these people's bodies and movement and expression, that kind of opened my eyes to communication being not just here, but it's all of it.
We have training as mimes, even though I think if you say you have training as a mime, everybody's like, oh, he's a mime. You know, it's like, well, not really. I mean, that's one of my skills. Just like I have, you know, studied 8 different martial arts. I wouldn't exactly call myself a martial artist because I've never taken any of those to black belt level, but I've trained extensively in many, many different styles and techniques.
And the contortion ability. Now, I'm not a contortionist that has a circus act. I don't have like and here's what watch me get into this jar. I don't really do all that. I can put my legs behind my head. It's kind of want to see? I'm kind of a one-trick pony here. I can get them both back there if I've stretched. And I can fit into small places, like I can get into little glass cubes or whatever, a suitcase if it's big enough. Okay, yeah. But I didn't think that was ever gonna come in handy.
The fabrication team and the design team and the puppeteers and myself we're a team. I take their input as far as like, we need to design this animatronic and place it here. And then I'm like, oh, if we place the vision here, it will help me. It lends to getting the most out of the performance, you know, when we get on set. It doesn't matter, like comfortability, I never really try to design something so that I'm comfortable. It is always designing something so we get the most performance out of it.
Trying to see, like, if I had to go to the bathroom, like...
Oh. There's the snap in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I'm just trying to see with my arms how much I could reach.
Fred will help you.
Yeah.
With all this
Someone for the guy named Fred. There is a trap door for you in case.
There is a pee hole snap that I'll be able to use. And now I need my 7-foot urinal. That would help. So. Or else there'll be a lot of splashes everywhere.
These suits are incredibly expensive. I mean, in most cases, there are 2 suits that are made because if a suit gets damaged, then you need another suit, and you can't make these suits in 5 minutes. A hero suit is the suit that we use for close-up. It's got all the mechanisms that you need to get the expressions and everything.
Now, if you feel any pain or anything, let us know.
Then there's what they call a stunt head, which is got no mechanism in it, so you can run into a brick wall with that, and then you're not going to damage anything except yourself.
We've always found that the best body type for a suit character is somebody that's lean, because again, like makeup, suit building is an additive process. We can add the body structure that we want within reason.
The body cast, especially in some of the positions that you've got to be in for a body cast, for ape stuff, you know, in quadruped for maybe half an hour while they do the body cast. But what freaks a lot of people out is the live cast. If somebody can't deal with a live cast, then you know they can't wear an animatronic suit with a head.
Sweet. Nice. Cool. Yeah, by the way.
My biggest fights are with Dave Pennicus, our mechanical supervisor, because every project starts off this way. Dave with the fiberglass skull going, feel this. That feels really light. Well, because there's nothing in it. And then he starts adding everything. And I'm part of the problem because we'll say, we want this, and this to move. And then we look at it and go, oh, can we also have the jaw work side to side? Sure, throw in some more servos. Can we have the tongue flip up? Yes, throw in another servo. And then by the end of the day, I end up with an 11-pound gorilla head that I have to wear.
We'll go threaten some people. Yeah. Yeah. Stand around. I'll sit down for it.
Yeah, I created.
Kill the artist that made you first. That's usually what monsters do.
Kill their creators?
They kill their creator.
In the 50s, they started using more and more guys in suits, so to speak. That started the whole guys in suits thing again. It had kind of died out. I met Paul Blaisdell. He was just an artist originally, did artwork and things for pulp magazine stuff. And then he kind of fell into the business. He did a puppet for Beast with a Million Eyes. That was his first job, for Roger Corman, actually. Roger hired him back to do Day the World Ended, this three-eyed mutant thing. And then it went into the She-Creature. I like the Saucer Men because that's the first bug-eyed monster guys. We used the little guys for the first 3 days of shooting, and then all the close-ups were Paul or myself with the heads on doing the stuff. He and his wife Jackie built all the suits themselves. They had no idea how to do it. He just went down to the local foam rubber shop that for couches and things like that and built them over suits of underwear. It the Terror, I think, is probably one of his most unique suits, actually. And we go back to Crash Corrigan again. Crash was hired to play the monster. Nobody told Paul. That was the problem. Paul had always worn his own monster suit. Now, Ray's like 6'6", head's twice as big as Paul's. And so Paul had already sculpted the It head on himself. And so when he fit the thing on Ray the first time, well, it just exploded the head pretty much, you know. And he had a pretty bulbous chin, and it just stuck right out of the mouth. Lane Britton, the makeup artist, he came up with the idea of painting the thing like a tongue, and it worked. I think in the 50s, probably, they were done in such a hurry, and the budgets were very, very slim. It was very obvious it was a guy in a suit most of the time. And I think the public laughed more than they were scared.
The thing he's holding, watch it.
And a lot of them didn't look very good. They really didn't. They didn't spend much time on them at all. Now, Paul didn't spend time either, but his ingenuity made these work. But these other guys just kind of slopped stuff and put some hair on them or something and let them go. And so, you know, they weren't the best looking things in the world. The creature caused respect for the guys in suits.
Got it. That's enough.
When I look at what I've done in suits, the creature stuff still stands up today. It was above and beyond.
Millicent Patrick actually designed the suits. Everybody thinks Westmore did. No, I'm sorry, he didn't.
It's the only monster suit that I can think of where you can see it in broad daylight and it still looked just as good as it did when, you know, when it's dark and creepy in the shadows. You know, as most stuff you have to keep, you know, kind of dark and not look at it really well.
They understood the advantages of having different actors play the same creature and each of them bringing their expertise.
They got Ben Chapman, who was 6'6", to play the land creature. And Rico Browning, who is an incredible swimmer, can hold his breath for 5 minutes. And he did this swim, and he created this great side-to-side thing that was, you know. But he said, that's just the way I swim. I just swim that way. But I mean, with the creature, it looked really good.
is no offense, but you are a robot, aren't you?
That is correct, sir. For your convenience, I am monitored to respond to the name Robby.
Well, originally when Robby was built, they built it for a prop man who was at MGM who was going to be inside the robot. And then when they actually went to shoot the film, SAG stepped in and said, no, we have to have a Screen Actors Guild member to play the part.
Nice climate you have here. High oxygen content.
I rarely use it myself, sir. It promotes rust.
So that's actually when they hired Frankie Darro to come on and be Robby. But actually, he was only in really a couple scenes, and the rest of it was a guy named Frankie Carpenter, who was a stuntman.
Would 60 gallons be sufficient?
The guy who fits in Robby has got to have a rather strange physique. He's got to be about this tall, skinny as a rail and strong as an ox, because he weighs about 120 pounds or something like that. So it's kind of like carrying a sack of plaster around with you. He's a little bit top heavy also, so you have to really be careful where you're walking and so forth. You can't go up inclines that are too steep or anything like that. Of course, he was built for Forbidden Planet, and he was such a success that they really wanted to make use of him, so they actually made Invisible Boy really to take advantage of his popularity. He actually became like a movie star. I mean, he's in a whole bunch of movies and then continued on, actually. He's never really stopped working.
In Japan, it's a whole genre. The monster in a suit, the man in a suit, and they are literally masters at it.
Toho was one of the big five of the major studios in Japan, and also was one of the biggest studios in all of Asia. So even before doing a film like Godzilla, they were, a notable film company producing, films with Kurosawa and other directors. The head of the production department at Toho approached Eiji Tsuburaya, who was the special effects director. He had been in charge of the special effects department at Toho since 1938. Tsuburaya wanted to do stop motion since he was a fan of King Kong. It inspired him to go into visual effects from his long career as a cinematographer. But when he calculated how long it would take, he estimated it would take about several years. So they decided to use another technique, which had already been done in Japan before and was not uncommon in Hollywood, which is the man in suit. There were two actors who played Godzilla. There was HARUO NAKAJIMA and Katsumi Tezuka, and they came out of the stuntman group.
とにかくね、演歌の課長が僕を呼びつけて、カモンと言われて、台本をもらって、で、何ですかこれは。作品名がね、G 作品、アルファベットの G。その時はゴジラっていう題名がないの。
Before that, in terms of Nakajima, Nakajima was being trained as a pilot in the Special Attack Forces, or otherwise known as kamikaze. Luckily, the war ended, so he didn't die. After the war, he stumbled into work at Toho. At that time, when all the studios were hiring actors, there were a lot of people looking for work after the war because it was really bad conditions.
時代劇のアクター、要するにチャンバラね。戦国野郎っていう作品で10人ぐらい初めて切ったことある。それまでは全部切られっぱなし。
What led Nakajima to being hired as Godzilla was this big-scale war film called Eagle of the Pacific, directed by Ishiro Honda, who went on to do Godzilla, and the effects were done by Tsuburaya. There was a scene that required a bomb to fall on a Japanese carrier and knock out a plane, and his pilot that was ready to take off is immolated, and he has to jump out of the plane and roll on the deck. So they asked for volunteers, and Nakajima was the only one that stepped forward. So when the job came up saying, we have to stick this guy in a suit, they said, who do we get? And they went, hey, what about that guy, Nakajima? He let us set him on fire. Let's get that guy. He's nuts.
監督がお前これやれと。そういう度胸を見たんだ。
It was mostly made out of melted rubber. No, I'm talking about like reclaimed tire rubber. Foam rubber didn't really exist at that point in Japan. It was stiff. They rejected the first suit. They made the second one a little more flexible, but it was very rough going for the actor inside because they didn't tailor it to suit one person.
本当、僕の場合は 100キロあった。100キロ。そのね、2、3キロね、痩せてもね。
To keep this heavy suit from collapsing upon itself, they had to put a lining of wire and bamboo. And that would rub up against the actor's skin and cause severe, burns on his skin, peeling, bleeding. They suffered the agonies of hell to play Godzilla.
いや、全て危ない。だけど私は若いから平気。いや、ゴジラのようなことはやってないですね。ゴジラ初めて。全然わからないから、円谷のディレクターがね、要するに僕のプリント、キングコングのプリントを持ってるということで、私上野の動物園行って、モンキーね、要するにモンキーの動きがあるでしょ。その動きを見て、それからクマとね、ゾウの動き、そのアクションを見て、ああいう動きをやってんだなという感じをね、全部こう動きを全部取れて1週間ぐらい勉強しました。
Katsumi Tezuka was Nakajima's senior at the studio, so he felt this, well, I have to do this too, because it can't just be Nakajima, because I'm his boss. So they switched over. It was a tandem between Nakajima and Tezuka. The actors could only take about 5 or 10 minutes before they'd pass out.
あれ体重が重いから100キロあるでしょ。その重いからペアでやろうということになって、それで結局俺ワン、オンリーになっちゃった。オンリーワンなの。100キロからだいたい65キロぐらい。ゴジラの逆襲ね。でアクションがすごいでしょ。立ち回りがあって、そういうあれでもってそういう100キロの怪獣じゃできないんですよ。アクションしやすいあれはね、柔道2段と最初のゴジラっていうのはね、要するに怖いというようなゲッとこうくるやつなんでしょ。と次の作品になると子供向けの写真が多いんです。である時円谷先生がね、要するに他の人から言われたゴジラに血を流してみたらどうかというふうに言ったわけ。この血液ですね。子供向けの番組に血を流したら絶対ダメだ。
Nakajima retired in 1972.
でも俺これだけ26本もやったなっていう感じがしますね。だからもうこれだけやったんだけども、もっとやりたいっていう気持ちがあったんだよ本当は。彼はほら怪獣作ってるもんですよ。キャラクターをね作ってるんですよね。だからそれでもって長い付き合いなんだよね。マイフレンドになってるね。
There's things that are painful, and I don't like talking about the pain of them because it will end up reminding me at some point in time. So what I choose to do is sort of dissociate myself from it.
It's putting yourself in a mental state, not thinking negative thoughts, because you don't want to say I'm claustrophobic in here. It's more about I am the character. I can do this, even though it's 150 degrees in there. It's still fun.
I coined the phrase "make the pain familiar" because that's how I train. That's how I approach every job. Playing Mr. Wink in Hellboy, I was swimming in the pool, 2 hours a day. I was riding my bike to and from set, which was 40 kilometers away every day. I was walking around with the weight vest on, the wink boots on, with the wink head on, and a towel wrapped around that with it soaking wet. So I would have to pull oxygen in through that wet towel so that my lungs would get stronger. The thing is that my muscles are so used to feeling that pain. I know that I have the mental strength because of the physical training that I've done that I can get through the rest of the day and through the rest of the shoot.
You need to make it through a 12 to 18-hour day sometimes with a lot of stuff on you and be as fresh at the end of the day as you were at the beginning of the day. That's the hard part, and that's the athlete's mentality that pushes you through to the finish line. You know, like, I will finish, I will have that big kick at the end of the race.
I always know that dog is very pliable and resistant to torture. He never complains, although he bleeds and cries. You know, so those are the silent signals. If dog is bleeding from a huge gear on his back, you gotta stop. You know, and when he played the Angel of Death, the rig in his back was so brutal that I think we did draw blood, and we said, let's stop it, let's wire it.
With Nakajima, he was playing Varan in the 1958 movie, and the scene required for him to walk over this truck, and they blew it up underneath him. It burned right through the costume and burned his groin. He did not yell for help, he didn't cry. He kept on with the scene because he said, until the director said cut, I kept acting.
もう僕はアクターだからね、怪我をしたっていうことは一切 no speak.
And he said the reason why I did that is because everyone depended on me. Everyone depended on me to continue on, because otherwise we'd have to shut down production that day. So everyone's jobs, everyone's families, everyone's meals depended on me continuing and not, you know, it's sucking it up and being a man, basically.
I usually like to get my mind off things when I'm doing this kind of stuff, so I do get into a Zen place, because if you really think about what you're wearing and the kind of physical exertion you're giving, you have to zone out and put your mind other places, or else you'll go crazy. So I zone my mind out and you know, tell my mind that I'm somewhere else, or just think of happier moments.
We found with the different creature suits, in building them and in playing them, that there's a lot of different ways that you can try to help the performer. We had one suit where you couldn't actually see out of the suit, and there was a camera on the nose of the character with a screen inside. As far as the suit getting really warm, they have these things called cool suits.
The cool suit, huh?
Cool suit, yeah. This is attached to a cooler, basically ice or cold water. Then it goes through, runs through, cycles through.
You like it?
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, it lasts a good hour, depending on how hot, how much movement, because your body will warm it up pretty fast.
For me, myself, I found that it gives me pneumonia.
I was working on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. They decided to pump cold water through the vest, and I almost went to shock. It was just too much of a shock for my body that I told them to turn it off.
It's better not to be 110 degrees and then all of a sudden become 80 degrees in 4 minutes. So we've actually found that the best way to do it are basically little power fans, and in between takes, I take these fans and cool them down from the outside.
I mean, we could all say like, oh, it's hell, like, you know, and a lot of actors do like to complain about like how, you know, but to me that's not the fun part of the story, complaining about it, because the people who make it do the very best they can to keep you as comfortable as possible.
Tsuburaya had little side project companies, proposed a couple of television shows, and eventually one of them, Ultra Q, was produced, which is sort of a cross between the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Godzilla. Different Monsters of the Week, shot in black and white, it was shot in 35mm, and became an instantaneous hit on January 1st, 1966, and created the monster boom. Ultraman followed in July. Being from another planet, crash lands on Earth, accidentally killing a human being, combines his life force with that of the human being to bring him back to life, and decides to dedicate his time on Earth to fight evil monsters that threaten mankind. The first actor to play Ultraman was Bidden Furuya, and he started out as a character actor at Toho, appeared in a lot of films before they stuck him in a suit. The reason why they picked him is because he was very tall, 6'1", he was young, he was athletic, and most importantly, his body was properly proportioned. He had long legs and long arms and a long torso, so he's built more like a Western man than Japanese men who generally have shorter legs. So he was perfect, because they didn't want this guy running around in this as a superhero with short legs. HARUO Nakajima also played a couple of the monsters on those shows.
ウルトラマン、つばやさんがね、私がプロダクション持ってやるからね、中島春ちゃん頼むよ、お前に任したよって言われて。
He also was sort of the unofficial choreographer and helped train the new generation of suit actors that were brought in to do all these. He couldn't play all the monsters himself in these shows.
まあ、おやさんはね、周りが全部素人みたいなもんだから、ね、少し慣れてるから、要するにお前が全部教えてあげてと。で、アクションも全部その主役ウルトラマン、あれに全部アクションを教えて、で、こう来たら俺が倒れるというようなその動きを全部つけるわけ。親分だから。
Ultraman is a lot bigger than Godzilla in Japan right now. They made the shows so the whole family can watch. There was something for everyone. And it just continued on for, more than 40 years now. It's Ultraman, Ultraman, Ultraman in Japan.
The Gorn suit was all neoprene rubber. A 1/4-inch thick was the base of it. That's a diver's wetsuit. Wao Chang had put all the muscles on top of this neoprene. So some places you had rubber this thick. You could see through the eyes, but you can't look down. If I wanted to look down, I'd have had to do that. He could not move like Captain Kirk could move. He couldn't run because the rubber was stopping you from bending your arm. I couldn't do this very good. I could do this when I threw the rock, but I couldn't bend to pick it up. I had to bend way over and then come way up. Thank God the rock didn't weigh any more than it did. You see, this was filmed in 1966, I believe, and it aired in 67. Well, that was a long time ago, and I was young, and all I wanted to do was work. I never thought about doing any creatures. I just thought about where's my next job coming from.
Okay. Wow! I want to go to Hollywood!
When you're in a suit, you're a puppeteer. You are a body puppeteer, which is, in fact, I've referred to it that many times, body actors. The main connection is that you have the same common problem with both. You have to get your performance outside of the suit, or in the case of a puppet, out of the puppet.
I learned from Billy Hayes, who was Witchy Poo on Puffin Stuff, to not flail around and go crazy. Just do what you're supposed to do, throw focus to the other character, and stop moving around. Because if you see a lot of these costume character people, they're just all over the place. I was the tallest one in the Croft organization with the costume characters when we first started, of course. So I felt really good, 5'7". I'm a giant, because everybody else was like the little people.
Where am I? You're on Living Island, son. And I'm the mayor, H.R. Puffin Stuff. And these two little fellas are Kling and Klein. H.R. Puffin Stuff.
I did not do the original Puffin Stuff series. When I came into the series, I wanted to make it so much differently. I thought that I liked the character that was being done, the way it was being done, but I didn't like, it was like too stodgy, too old, and I wanted more.
We hope someday the whole world will live this way.
They were not drug-induced. I was drug-induced. No. We never thought of it that way, and we just never did. And I never saw any drugs on the set.
Puffin, 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 puffin.
All we had on like the eyes on Puffin Stuff was these round cylinder things with little balls that bounced around. That would never go over today. Today the mouth would all be animated. But in those days, I would have to go, hi there, how are you? And bounce the head so that the mouth would bounce up and down. Crofts are thinking we're trying to pitch doing a Puffin Stuff movie. We've done one in the 70s. Now they're going to do another one and they'll do it all CG. I don't think it's a bad move that it's going into CG now. It's just going to be different. I don't think the heart will be there, but I don't know for a fact. I won't be there. Neither will my heart.
The thing about Jim Henson, he was really an inventor of a lot of this stuff.
Well, you have to go back to the beginning days, the Muppet days. They had characters like Sweetums. Sweetums is probably the most well-known.
Nice lady know what Sweetums to hold cue cards?
Well, no.
Nice lady let Sweetums hold something else?
Oh, sure. You can hold anything you want.
Oh, the best offer me have all week.
And that was very, very basic. It was just a person in a suit, and you dealt with the basic things of finding eye lines and such. Now that is operated, I don't know if you know about Sweetums, in order to deliver dialogue, they put a dead hand, they pin one of the hands, usually the right hand, to the body. You still have gesture, the ability to gesture with your left hand, but your right hand then is inside the head, and you're flapping the mouth as you talk. Well, Sweetums talks like this, he talks like this, he flap, 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 flap. He's a very flappy puppet. One of the things that Jim saw that he wanted to do was to expand on that. So when he got into the animatronic characters, say in the Dark Crystal and the Labyrinth period, it took a team, a minimum of 4 or 5 people, sometimes as many as 10 people, each with their own little control mechanism of some type. Somebody might just be doing an eyelid, or moving the eyes left and right. So each person had to coordinate. So you had a large team you had to coordinate.
There, Frank.
And then Labyrinth, too, was another one. You know, there's a character in there called Ludo that is this gigantic creature suit that this guy is wearing. And you see one scene where he's laying down or sitting on his butt and actually has to stand up. And when you actually see the amount of effort it takes just to stand up without falling, I mean, this thing came to life.
Oh, here, let me help you. You okay?
And that's when he started to develop the digital puppetry system that they have now. From the outset, they had the Waldo and the Joystick. The Waldo was usually performed with the right hand. It was like a hand puppet. It looked like a mouth. And inside that mouth, there were connections so that as you moved things in this direction, there were electrical pots, servos, that were registering that movement and translating it to the computer.
Oh, a fellow chucker, eh?
I loved being a turtle. The suit was tough. It was a big sponge to begin with. It was foam latex. The suit was made of foam latex. So, and I'm what I call a spritzer to begin with. I sweat a lot. And you get cooking up inside that suit, and after about the first 15, 20 minutes, the whole rig can weigh as much as 70 pounds because it's soaked up a lot of your sweat as well.
God, I love being a turtle!
There were 2 little eraser-sized pinholes just below the bandana of the turtle heads. And that's what we could see out of. And once in a while, when the mouth was open, you could catch a glimpse of what was directly in front of you down below here. So that's how you had to deal with all of these people with roundhouse kicks coming at your head and stuff like that. So it was a little difficult that way. But we were able to control a lot of our performances physically as long as we could deal with that. Henson's has always been character-driven. It's another character like any other actor in this piece. And it has a beginning and an end, and it has a start point, and it has a place it wants to get to. Each character has its own set of problems that you have to deal with and learn how to overcome or adapt, because sometimes, as I said before, you can't overcome them. You just have to say, okay, well, this character's arm won't go beyond this point, so, oh, well, let's make it a thing. This character does this all the time. So you find the ways to adapt or overcome the challenges.
Dude, they're gonna go so nuts when I show up in this for the first time.
Yeah.
Because they've been waiting for this thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe this will get easier as we do it a few times.
Silver bags.
Hey, Doug, how's the head movement doing?
Good. I got a bungee on it, so it takes off the weight that goes on the bridge of the nose, which is you have to have it, or else it just kills your nose and you can't breathe as well. So it really helps to have that bungee going from the back of the head down to somewhere around the back of the waist. The weight is in the mechanics and stuff, but the suit is made very soft. It's very flexible and stuff, so the movements are really good with it.
What are you talking about?
Hi.
Are you making this stuff up, or?
I am.
Now that you're in something uncomfortable and you know you're there, mentally you have to put up with it. Now you've got to perform.
So much about the character development can be given to you with the design of the makeup itself. For instance, something as simple as this, with my hand right now. With a finger extension on, that becomes really loud when it's going whap, 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 right? So do you have to push harder? Not really. Sometimes you have to be even more subtle if you want to get a little gesture across. Other times, you've got something on that doesn't move, and you want to give this kind of a look, like, but your face doesn't do that. So you have to give it something that push it somehow so that emotion comes through it anyway. Sometimes these designs are elaborate enough where you might have the entire face that's kind of built out in a whole mask that's mechanical, where there's a lot of electronic bits that are going. Well, what happens in that case is you have a team of people with little joysticks off camera, and then they have to take on an actor's view of this character as well from their fingers. So a performance is required from them that has to work in concert with my performance.
And you can hear the different servos, and you can kind of see the eyes and the mouth, and you know when things are moving, and you know what they sound like. So you start to really kind of hear what the puppeteer is doing.
If you've ever watched a puppeteer on a film set, it's kind of funny because they're off camera doing this a lot. You know, their face reflects everything that their thumbs are doing, you know.
I've had the gift of working with a lot of the same puppeteers over and over and over again. So during the rehearsal process, we know, like, when I do this and do the reveal, he's going into a roar, or he's doing all that communication that's going on is a beautiful thing, and that's the marriage that I want to be a part of.
Nice, Doug. No, he's having a attack. That's a signal. Oh, yeah,
I think the whole thing with people becoming aware of people wearing the costumes was really during the Star Wars period. Star Wars brought so much attention to that I think people then started going, oh, well, who played this and who played that?
You had the Wookiee, you had the Cantina guys. It was like probably 30 guys in suits, basically.
To be C-3PO and be that poor guy sitting in that metal suit walking on the desert. I remember even as a kid going, oh, that poor bastard. In Chewbacca, I mean, as simple kind of as Chewbacca is, and the little bit of mouth movement they had that was just basically triggered off of him opening the jaw, that thing was totally believable. And he performed through it. He created a character. If you didn't have that, that's a guy in a mask. And because it all worked, and the performances he's gotten, and the design look of all this stuff, it changed the film industry for real.
When Alien came around, I didn't know what it was. I hadn't read any stuff about it, except it's a new horror film and it's a new character. And then, when all of a sudden the alien appears, you know, I mean, I knew it had to be a guy in a suit, but I mean, I'd never seen anything like it before. There's a totally unique character. Well, that and Predator both. I mean, they've given more life, I think, to get guys in suits than anybody has.
I started playing the alien character in Alien 3 for David Fincher. It was also a character that I had loved from earlier in the movies, you know, from the first movie. And then when we did Aliens with Stan, those alien warriors sort of became more about numbers of creatures, and it wasn't so much about the threat of evil in the single creature, which it became again in Alien 3.
He wanted to suit up in the alien suit after hours when we were shooting Aliens in London, and I thought, hey, that's neat. Yeah, let's see how Tom looks. At least he's thin, you know. A lot of these stuntmen, English stuntmen they've got are like 200 pounds and 5'9".
I met Alec at Stan Winston's. Stan would pair us up on a lot of projects, and we both had very similar ideas about what works and what doesn't work in terms of monsters.
Stan had said to us, everything that I love about you guys is exactly what will eventually lead you away from me. And that's the way life is. And he had a very kind of fatherly attitude towards that.
And he was going off to direct his own features, so we thought that would be the great time for us to move out and try to get our own projects off the ground.
I think it was on Alien 3 that I started to realize that this guy's committed, he thinks like an actor, he moves in a very specific way, he can change that performance, he can take notes from the director, even when they're notes like, you know, David Fincher would give, and he would say, he looks like a Barbie doll. You know, and you're left, I gotta go back and tell Tom in the suit, gotta figure this one out. Fincher says, you look like a Barbie doll. I don't know what that means, and Tom would laugh and go, okay, tell him I'll give him 20% less Barbie doll.
If I'm in the suit, I know that Alec is out there working with our team of puppeteers to make sure that everything we want to see in terms of performance is being handled.
Look at the camera. I'm able to hear what the director has to say, and then I'll process that and discuss it with Tom as so, like, you know, what should we do to change this?
There's plenty of times on set where Alec will be the voice that can call out to me and say, turn to the right, turn to the left, move 5 feet forward. And he can break it down for me if I'm in a difficult situation where I'm blind and can't see to maneuver around set. Working with people like Sigourney Weaver was tremendously helpful because she was very supportive of the art and the craft of the creature work, but also of my work as an actor inside the creature.
He's going to be best known for the Alien work because he's just put more hours in that series of films alone than most suit performers do in a lifetime.
Predator is a really great man in a suit movie. It's very curious, when you saw the photographs, the stills, before the movie, the design was not that great for me. I thought, oh, you know, but when Stan Winston had these things move so fluidly, so beautifully, it was just, it came alive, and the performance is key.
Bad idea.
Kevin was called the Gentle Giant. One, because he was 7'1" or 7'2". All I know is he towered over me when I met him, and it seemed like he always had time for people. He said he loves to see people smile. How great is that? The Predator character itself is as popular as it is because of how Kevin portrayed it. I can't portray a Predator without knowing that the parameters have already been set. Because if I step outside of that, people aren't going to believe it. They're going to be like, that's not what a Predator does. And his honesty in portraying it, and every movement was so efficient and believable in that. That's why I think it had longevity, because people believed the performance.
Oh! Sit. Kevin Peter Hall was Harry and the Hendersons.
Sit!
One of the greatest man-in-a-suit creatures done by Rick Baker in modern times.
When I was playing Frankenstein at Universal Studios, they decided to introduce Harry into the park, okay, as a walk-around character. So they said, go down, meet Kevin. They were doing the show on the lower lot. His recommendation was, never get caught acting Harry, just be Harry. He's like, let the suit direct you on what you need to do and follow your natural instinct of a child at play, you know, and the curiosity of that. You know, and little I know at that time that little over 9 months later, I'd be auditioning for that very role because Kevin had passed. I've been waiting 19 years to play Predator because that'd be the second character of Kevin Peter Hall's. To be able to come into that and play both those characters is extremely important to me. Not just for my career and because of where I want to take the character, but because of the emotional tie that I have to the other characters. There seemed to be a big push at a certain time to put just many different performers in creature suits. They're like, we'll just get another tall guy, we'll just get another short guy, we'll just get another guy that fits. It all seemed to come down to height and weight. And so I thought in my back of my mind, while all this was happening, that I knew performers that weren't getting calls on these auditions.
Unless you're a real dyed-in-wool fan, you wouldn't recognize me on the street. That doesn't bother me so much as in the business of getting cast, casting directors don't know who I am.
So I started up a company called Creature Boy Productions, and I was working as a liaison between production and the special effects shops on filling this need.
He felt that there needed to be a union of these people so that Hollywood could call Brian and say, here's what we're looking for, and Brian would have the best of the best.
I was working with a team of, let's say, 25 to 30 different people, whether it be just puppeteers or whether it be like guerrilla performers or performers that were, let's say, 5'9" and shorter, and then guys that were like 6'3" and taller.
And these were all people that had proven it over and over that they were actors within these suits.
And I realized that production eventually just didn't want to hear it.
There was a time in Hollywood right around, I think, 95, 96, where for some reason the producers and everyone in Hollywood turned around and decided that creature performers were no longer needed. Stuntmen could do the job.
And I can understand that because it came down to a dollar and cents thing. You know, we would rather take a chance, you know, and we'll shoot around it.
And some of the stuntmen are actors and can pull this off. So I'm not saying that that's not the case, but for Hollywood to think that there's no craft in what the suit performers did was BS.
Most of the time it makes performers like Derek Mears, Doug Jones, Doug Tate, and myself look like heroes. Because this is what we do. We know what we're getting into. I just realized that I can only pound my head against the wall for so long.
Now at the same time, CG characters were becoming much more popular, and they weren't even having creature performers for a lot of this stuff. They were just CG characters now.
After I did Harry and I went and worked with Rick Baker over at Cinovation Studios, I remember Rick taking his whole crew to see Jurassic Park. And we sat there and we went, our business is done. And it did, it dried up for like 3 or 4 years. You know, they were doing big practical stuff, but there wasn't guys in suits.
With the advent of CGI, you have the potential of what you can do now is limitless.
And for us, the biggest example is Starship Troopers. Without the advent of CGI, nobody would make that movie. There's no way even today that we could build 10,000 creatures to run across a desert landscape. We couldn't even build one creature self-contained of those size, of those shapes that would run across a desert floor completely unaided. But the problem becomes when that becomes the only choice of executing a technique.
We worked on Van Helsing, and at the point we worked on Van Helsing, Stephen Sommers wanted to do the werewolves as CG werewolves. And I'd mentioned, you know, if we put a guy in a creature suit and scaled him up, then we could get a real good performance and create something really cool, which I would have preferred to have done. I understand why he went with the CG version of it, but there are ways of using practical, scaling them up, and making that work really well.
And then starting in about 2002, Len Wiseman wanted to do a werewolf movie, Underworld. While I was working on Underworld, I got a call from Spectral to do a Hellboy, Samael, and I'm like, yeah. And then from that, you know, back over at Stan's to do Doom. Then all of a sudden there seemed to be this big push to do practical, and we want to see stuff in front of us. We want to touch it, we want to feel it, we want to smell it.
For a while there, we were all scared. Uh-oh, our jobs are in jeopardy. We're never going to work again because it's all going to be people, you know, you're doing this mousy things, and then your creature's on film now. But thankfully, audiences want to connect with people. They want to connect with a character on film that's living and breathing.
Oh.
As Guillermo del Toro put it best himself, he said he uses computer graphics when a character is too small or too big to be played by a human. That's a pretty good rule to go by.
I think the best guys to perform in a suit in my mind are Brian Steele and Doug Jones. So I just hired them for the run of the show, and they have to play more characters than one. You know, they are screwed.
Del Toro, he has such passion for the practical. And whenever I work with him, everyone's like, what's it like working with Guillermo? And I said, well, you got to be prepared to work as hard as he does. Because he'll look at you right in the eye and go, Brian, like, you're a creature performer. You shouldn't need a break. This is what you do. He goes, I'm a director. I'm not taking a break because this is what I do. And you know what? I encourage that. I love that. It makes me want to just train harder and go, really? This is what I'm bringing to the table now.
He likes it that way. Movies like the first Hellboy, that put me finally as a speck on this celebrity radar. People were wondering, who's that blue fish guy? Because it was a category, like, it wasn't a full mechanical head where I'm just like running around the background going, ah! It was a character that had dialogue and personality and relationship, but he still looked like a freak.
Abe Sapien is his biggest creation so far.
Abe is a character that I would have over to the house for dinner, and I just want to get to know him. There's an innocence about him, though, that I really connect with.
She's alone in the world. I want to help her. I need to care for her.
You're in love. Have a beer.
And he has, yes, he has the signature Doug Jones moves, you know, but those signature Doug Jones moves are varied. Let's say that he has an alphabet of moves, you know. I would say he creates poetry with that alphabet.
And in the meantime, a movie like Pan's Labyrinth comes out. It was very, very sweet to see this kind of turn happen where I went from being, you know, considered as a monster suit actor guy to they were actually giving me movie star status. I owe my career to a couple of things. One is the creature effects makeup industry, who has referred me for job after job after job, and I've gotten cast in things through the back door that way. And the fan base that is so incredibly loyal. Everything from buying the tickets to the movies themselves to blogging about things on that interwebernet thing. And they talk and they say glowing things about you. It really has been a blessing to me. And again, that dignity and respect has risen up because of it.
With the technology that we have, they've able to engineer things to where they're using carbon fiber. They're using milling machines to make the parts so they're lightweight, but then you can make a suit that I can walk on all fours and not be assisted by wires. But the hitch to that is they decided to make bigger suits. Let's say Wink from Hellboy 2. 10 years ago, that would have just been a total CG character of some kind, or it would have been a suit that staggered around and really didn't move that well because the technology hadn't caught up to really make that character just pop on screen. You know, I'm 6'7", I was up on 9-inch lifts. I looked out of the mouth, so he was even 4 inches taller than that. We had a suit that weighed 135 pounds. It was just big. It was just big in general. He took up space. I became very familiar with balance and losing balance and how to regain my balance with my eyes shut. So during a fight scene, I'm throwing punches or taking punches, and it's done by beats and footwork, not based on vision. So we knew after a while, the muscle memory was so familiar as far as being able to work our footwork, we were dancing.
A lot of times now, they will use CG enhancement to a suit performer to do things and give them elements that they don't have in the suit. For example, we worked on a show where we put a giant tail and giant wings on Brian Steele because to actually physically try to do that as part of the suit would have been impossible to make it come to life and flap and do all the stuff and the motions and everything that they wanted.
Abe Sapien, great blend between CG, the blinks, beautiful. Or giving the organic feel to some of the skin. Samael in the first one, you know, walking around quadruped, but giving some rippling to the skin as a mesh, as an overlay.
To me, that's the way to do it. It's enhance the stuff, use as much practical as possible, and then do something to that to make it more spectacular. Because then you get a physical performance, you have something that the other actors on set can react to. There's a realism there that, you know, I don't think you get when you just composite something in.
It's a great marriage. It's going to be interesting to see how mocap then interacts with that also.
The transition from suit performing into motion capture performing is actually, for me, It was pretty smooth.
The basic premises are the same. An actor is performing the body, but all of the other parameters are different.
On the motion capture stage, there are multiple cameras that are all around you, and it's an infrared lens that comes onto the little shiny markers that are basically on your joints, so basically wrist, elbow, shoulder, and they track the motion capture, these, you know, the little shiny balls. Basically, they form your spine, and then they develop the digital character over that.
What we're doing is in real time. That's the big hook that a director can come in and instead of saying, okay, let's shoot the shot, this is what I want, do this, do that, do that, and then waiting for the animation to come back to see what happened, we can show that director live in real time what's happening, what he's getting.
I will say that it is nice to not have the weight of the heads on my head as much anymore. Sid himself is actually 1.5 times bigger than me. His feet are, you know, 1.5 times larger than mine, so these markers kind of, they represent the outside of the shoe. That's why we've got these pads here, because his body basically lines up here. So
it keeps your arms out.
Yeah, it keeps your arms out of, you know, the sweatshirt, out of his body.
If you're in a suit on a set, you can't walk through that table. However, in a CG world, you can walk right through that table if you don't pay attention. Now, what we try to do in the case of Sid, they will create representations of the virtual world in your physical space. For example, if there is, in fact, a table in the virtual world, he'll make a construct, usually out of this PVC piping, and put it in that place. So you have a physical frame of reference of where you can and cannot go. We insert layers between ourselves and the performance. And the task that we have is how to get through those layers to get your performance out to the camera. We make our job easier on one hand by developing all of these technologies, but we also make our job more difficult because we have to get through those technologies or learn how to adapt and use those technologies.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. With the lighting and stuff. Yeah. Tossing people.
Powers your left.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Brett, what are you doing?
I'm just painting some extra bits of skin, then I'm tucking some of the gaps and stuff like that. There's some spots where the suit kind of gaps open.
Oh, okay.
I'll just tuck like a fat roll in there or something like that. Instead
Oh, come on.
Yeah, man.
I did not need a fat roll.
You need some fat rolls, man.
Stretching it out here. Getting ready to put a bombanog on. Be nice and loose. So I don't pull a muscle. It's important. You know, don't want to hurt myself on the first night. Got a few more weeks to go here.
Many times if I'm in a suit, we usually get that suiting up process down to, in some cases, 30 minutes. But the ADs will still bring us in an hour and a half early because they're not sure. They either don't buy it, they don't believe us, they're not sure. So we'll be brought in for an hour and a half and then we'll wait for about an hour and then suit up in a half hour.
One in the morning. First time in the suit. Time to be a monster. Big time. It's exciting. It's been so long, you know, I've been with this project for like a year now. And, you know, it's finally here. And that's exciting in itself.
The radios for performance and...
Yeah, give me some direction. The servos are really loud, and when they were talking to me the other day, I couldn't hear them, so... Hey, Peter.
Roll sound.
Rolling.
Action! And Steele, we're going to start the flipping of the van next.
The son of a bitch. Ain't no joke. Definitely a good little taste of what I'm gonna go through. And that was not even the most physical stuff I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do even more physical stuff now.
Look at the heat coming off your head.
Yeah, I'm steaming. I am steaming like a pile of dung. That was pretty intense. When I was swiping the guys, you know, the stunt guys, just it takes you off balance and the ground is kind of uneven and stuff. But you know what? I was fine. You know, I just was out of breath. So I feel okay. You know, I don't feel lightheaded or anything. So.
How do you feel about your performance?
I feel, you know, I feel like I gave it my all. I'd love to see the take, to see it, but it seemed like the director was happy, so if he's happy, then I trust it.
Suck.
Okay, well, I guess I wasn't doing that well then.
Thanks, Doug.
When you come home finally and the job is over and you have expended heart and soul and blood, sweat, tears, for me, it means closing the shades, it means turning off the phone, it means rocking back and forth and just healing for however long it takes, you know? For me, that can be anywhere from a couple days if it was a short job to weeks, maybe a month, depending on how long that job was and how much it took out of me. I never want to leave the creature makeups and costume work behind. I want to keep that as a part of my career as long as I can. If I die under rubber on a Guillermo del Toro film set, that would be a happy way to go for me.